Hey guys, Kunal here. Bans just got announced. It's time to start cooking. We have a Lucian deck profile for you. This is where I would start with Lucian, where I believe, based on the meta that you see here that's predicted, focused on Irelia, Kaisa, Victor, and then all the other decks, where I think the deck list should be. I know a lot of you guys play the combo variant of Lucian, so that's the deck profile I wanted to showcase here on where I would start testing Lucian at the beginning of this set that I'm calling 2.5 post bans. So let's hop into the deck profile, and real quick, please like, comment, and subscribe. It goes a long way for these kind of videos. So first we have the champion unit of Lucian. I'm not going to explain what all the cards do. I think you guys probably know that by now, or you might have seen it in a previous video. But the reason I'll talk about other things, such as like why this card is only a one of. I think this card is really strong early game. It's probably the best turn one or turn two card you can develop in Riftbound right now. But as the game progresses, as turns go on, say we're on like turns 5, 6, 7, or 8, which is mostly considered like mid to late game, playing the Lucian champion from your hand is not really impactful enough. It doesn't have accelerate. All it really has is weapon master. So you're going to play this once you spend 3 energy, like 1/3 to 1/2 of your energy is already gone, and it just really limits what you can do the rest of the turn. We want cards that like impact the board state, that are continuing to push our advantage or continue to fight with the opponent. More copies of the Lucian champion does not really achieve that. And the other thing I hear people say is like, well, this is like your best way of conquering and also staying safe in base. So if they remove the first one with something like a Victor or like a Kaisa deck, you're going to want more copies of it. And I think this is one of the hardest champions to defend and keep alive. So this is not really how you want to be playing those matchups and how you want to win those matchups. Alright, let's talk about the spells here. So I'm doing 1 punch first and 2 against the odds. The reason I have these in the main deck and in this ratio, so punch first, because it costs 2 power, it's quite expensive if you're forced into using a punch first early in the game for like tempo reasons, or not wanting to like lose like a Lucian or something when trying to combat. Whereas something like against the odds, this is relevant at all points of the game, and it's quite cheap, and it'll give you the +2 might for the entire turn, even after the combat is over. Also, both of these cards work on offense and defense, which a lot of the other red combat tricks, such as Blood Rush and Cleave, they only work on offense. So these are the cards I prefer. If we look at like the possible like meta decks, like Punch First is obviously the best card for Irelia, and against the odds may fall flat because Irelia likes to do one-on-one combat for the most part. But if you think about decks such as Kaisa, Victor, Rek'Sai, Azir, and some others, they like to swarm, right? They like to play with tokens. They like to go wide, and you can really get people off guard with against the odds. So just balancing them out, you could play 2 and 2. It just really depends how big Irelia is in the new meta. Some people think the deck is really awful, and some people absolutely think it's the best deck in the format, uncontested. So we'll see where that shapes up. We do have more copies of these combat spells on the side, and these are going to be brought in for Irelia after game 1. Next, we have our signature spell. 3 copies of this because it synergizes the best with your combo. You can score up to 4 or 6 points in a turn. So I don't think this card needs much explanation. Something I do want to talk about, 3 Sabotage. I see a lot of lists play only 1 Sabotage or 2. If you think Irelia, Kaisa, and Victor are the new meta, and I think this was true before bans, even when Draven was top meta deck, I always played 3 Sabotage in the main. I think a few different reasons why. One, whenever they leave 2 energy up, you have to start respecting Rebuke. It just kind of blows you out, and now that Fight or Flight's banned, Rebuke is going to be the purple defensive card of choice for the most part. I really will definitely be playing Rebuke in the main deck. So if you have Sabotage, it's your best way to answer that. And then other than that, I think just having hand knowledge, knowing that you don't have to risk entering a combat with like a high priority unit on our board, such as a Ruin Runner or a Ferris Forerunner. We don't have to risk entering combat that we know we cannot win because the opponent's hand is too good, or we play Sabotage and the opponent's hand is now not good enough where we can win that combat. I mean, just having hand information is such a huge advantage. I just don't ever see myself playing less than 3 copies. And I also almost never side out copies of Sabotage. The one deck that comes to mind where you might want to side some out is maybe Rek'Sai, because they tend to play spells from the top of their deck. So you could maybe get away with cutting down from 3 against Rek'Sai, but pretty much all of the other decks, if you think about like, just pick random ones, right? Like, think of like Victor, you want to get their Imperial Decree out. Think about Yi, you might want to get out like some gear that's stuck in their hand, or if they play Aurora, then hitting the Aurora is obviously probably like the best thing you can do. Same thing for like Azir, Lux, Ahri, like all their gear, all their spells that they play a ton of. Just being able to get rid of them is huge. And the other final thing about Sabotage is I don't play BRYNHIR in my decks. I don't think it's a card meant for Lucian. The way I play Lucian, we're usually hovering around 6 to 8 energy, and if you play BRYNHIR for 6, you're either tapped out or you have very little energy left to actually use your combat tricks and use other cards to progress the game state. I don't believe in BRYNHIR and Lucian. Next set with like Rengar being replayed off of the signature spells, I think it's a different story. So Sabotage takes the place of BRYNHIR by you play Sabotage, and then if your opponent has any kind of reactions in their hand, like Stupefies or Defiant Dances or whatever, they're going to want to respond to Sabotage with those cards because they're just so impactful, they don't want to lose them for free. Next we have 2 copies of Challenge. This card I go back and forth between 2 copies and 3 copies. It's going to depend on how the meta shapes up. Like Challenge is not that useful into Kai'Sa and Victor, but against Irelia it's like also like sometimes useful. So against those like 3 main meta decks, it's like not that great. Like it was really strong for like something like Draven and something like Ezreal, but the meta might shift away from them. So 2 copies of this card right now. If I think it's needed at 3, then I'll go back to 3. I could even see myself cutting it down to 1. I'm not sure yet. And then 1 copy of Angle Shot. I think the number of decks that play with gear have gone up significantly now that Miracle Draven is no longer the top deck of the format. If people want to play mid-range Draven, obviously Spinning Axes are a great target for this. And then for Irelia, getting their GA or getting their boots is really good. And then other decks like Yi and Fiora, it also has text. And then because we're a gear deck ourselves, we typically, if our opponent is not a gear deck, and because we are, we can just use it to equip our own gear onto our unit and also draw a card off of it. It saves you some power in the process, and Lucian is a pretty power hungry deck. So this 3rd copy of Longsword, if you look ahead, could be replaced with Angle Shot. I just found that playing all these gears, I was low on power quite often, so I got rid of 1 Longsword and placed in 1 Angle Shot, just to help with the power cost. Next we'll talk about the gear lineup. So Doran's Blade and Longsword, I think these are the best gears in the deck. More like they're way better than the combo gears in terms of like efficiency and what they provide in terms of like advancing your game state. Just having like they're basically Spinning Axes in Lucian when you're on offense, and they are one of the few ways you have a chance of making a hold by just like slamming a bunch of gear onto a unit and boosting their might to be like 9 or 10, and then you have like a against the odds or punch first behind that to back it up. You can actually find ways to hold with these kind of gears. And then the next gears are obviously the combo, right? So we're just trying to score the extra points with these gears. But if you think about like the efficiency that they provide in terms of stats, in terms of if you have the gears separately, you're just, you're paying 3 energy to play the card, and then equipping it, you're spending another energy and a power, and then Triforce, you're spending 4 energy to play the card, and they're only providing +2, right? So I much prefer the Doran's Blade, just 2 energy +2, rather than Triforce, which is 4 energy +2. And this becomes especially important after the side deck. Once people start bringing in Gear Hate, if you ever have to, like, on 5 energy or 6 energy, sometimes you have no other play besides slapping a Triforce onto the base, and your opponent will gladly use whatever Gear Hate they have to get rid of it. So you've effectively spent your turn doing nothing, and you got no value out of it. So these cards are post side deck you want to typically hold onto in your hand until you get both of them at the same time, and then you play both at the same time and score your 2 or 4 points, and then fully expect the Gear Hate from the opponent to blow them off the board next turn. Alright, we'll talk about the units here. So 3 Legion Regard, I think not every deck is playing this. If you think about closing out games with Lucian, like the end game, this is the cheapest possible accelerate unit that's available. And then if you slap on like 2 or 3 gears onto him and you attack, it's suddenly like a 8 might or 11 might attacker, depending on how many gears you have. And just being like cheaper to get onto the board ready as opposed to like a Kaisa. So instead of spending 5 energy for a Kaisa, we're spending 3 energy for a Legion Rearguard. It leaves us more room for like spells and stuff, like our signature spell and also our buff spells. And it also leaves you enough room in case you need to accelerate 2 of them for whatever reason. So you just have more lines of play with this card, and then also just being a vanilla on rate 2/2 turn 1 of the game is fantastic. Next we'll talk about Gemjammer and First Mate. In the combo version specifically, I like Gemjammer. Even though Kaisa Victor are going to be more popular, Pouty Poro is going to be getting a lot of value early in the game. But if we think about like a regional setting where you might have to play against like 9 different decks or whatever, this Gemjammer synergizing with your combo is going to matter a whole lot more. You're going to have spots in games where you manage to hold a battlefield, so your unit's ready on one battlefield, and then you Gemjammer the unit so it can gank over to the other one. Gemjammer in combination with First Mate is like a pseudo Relentless Pursuit. You can conquer a battlefield, play First Mate to ready it, and then play Gemjammer to gank the unit over. So just having that kind of mobility opens up your lines of play. And especially with the combo, you can find ways to steal games that you otherwise would not have won. And then, of course, it's also a vanilla 2/2 turn 1 the game. So these 2 drops, I think, are mandatory. A lot of Lucian lists have not been playing them recently before the bans. And if you want to play around stuff like Call the Weak, and if you want to actually be able to go first in a game, you definitely want to be playing these 2 drops. Next we have Kaisa. A lot of people ask, can we play Lucian without Kaisa? And the answer to that is it just depends on what your goal is. Kaisa is the best card in this deck because it has Accelerate and it draws you cards, and this deck is infamous for not drawing that many cards. So if you want to play this deck at a competitive setting, like a skirmish or higher, I would say, you want to be playing it with Kaisa. If you want to play at a skirmish and you don't have a Kaisa, it's fine. Just realize that you're at a severe disadvantage, and there's no 1-for-1 replacement that you can just put into this card slot, because nothing in the game does what this card does. Its versatility is unmatched. Moreover, you can just play it on turn 2, and it costs no power, so that on turn 3 you can play one of your 6 drops, and that alone just is really strong. Whereas if you think about something like a Kiana, it just costs a power to play in base, and it does nothing. So it will stop you from playing one of your 6 drops. So that's that. And then next, so this is the part about Lucian that I'm most excited about, is before when Draven and Ezreal were like top meta decks, we could not play Ferris Forerunner in the main deck. But now if you think about what the top meta decks are, I really like Kaisa Victor and a whole bunch of non-purple decks. Ferris Forerunner value is through the roof. I think like before the bans, I was having trouble beating Victor and Kaisa in game 1 reliably because you either had to see your Rune Runner and keep it alive through any kind of answer that the opponent might have, such as like Imperial Decree, Call the Weak, or Thousand Tail Watcher. Now, when you have Ferris Forerunner, you don't have to tunnel on Rune Runner that much. You have a higher chance of seeing one of your win condition units, and you have a higher chance of closing the game out. So I expect those matchups to become a lot better for Lucian, especially for the game 1s. So some side deck options. So Piercing Light was primarily used for mid-range Draven, also for Miracle Draven to a degree. It's in the side deck right now, just because I think any card in the main deck is infinitely more valuable than this, but if something like Challenge is like not really needed anymore, or not as strong as it used to be, I could see myself swapping Piercing Light and Challenges. Piercing Light is really strong into Kaisa and Victor. It's one of your only ways to come back. Those units play a bunch of small units. Those decks play a bunch of small units, and if they're up on points, maybe they have like 2 to 4 units spread across battlefields and bases, and Piercing Light just like kills all of them in one shot, and now you have a window to get back into the game. So it's definitely really useful. It just depends on how the meta shakes out. And if you think about other decks in the meta like Fiora, Yi, Aurora decks, even Azir, Piercing Light is pretty dead into a lot of those decks. So I'm not sure if I want to main deck this card right now. I think Challenge is just useful for no matter what the matchup is, whereas Piercing Light is more variance heavy. The second copy of Punch First and the 2 copies of Blood Rushes, these are pretty much for Irelia. Sorry, I need to turn my Discord on. Do not disturb. I'll just leave Discord. Yeah. So yeah, these copies of Blood Rush and Punch First, they are for Irelia primarily, but then if you think about how Punch First is used, it's one of your only defensive combat spells. If your game plan is going to be, I need to play around my Rune Runner being an untargetable unit and defend him through any kind of attack my opponent might have on him, like a Thousand Tail Watcher push, or swarming it with like a whole bunch of smaller units, or just going 1-for-1 with like a really big unit like Master Yi might do, or Fiora. Punch First is the card you want, so we have an extra copy of it for those kind of matchups where the might matters more than anything else. And Blood Rush is also for those like Master Yi and Irelia type of decks that on defense they're just as threatening as they are on offense. So 2 copies of Akshan. So this card, I was super low on this card before the bans. Not really having much text into anything besides Irelia at the time, but now that gear decks are going to be more common since Draven is out and it was gatekeeping a lot of them, Akshan has a good amount of versatility here. Maybe even like in mirror matches and such, it's going to be huge, especially if you're both playing combo and like your opponent plays like the combo and then you only have one piece of the combo, but now you can Akshan and steal that combo piece, and now suddenly you have the combo and your opponent doesn't. Like there's a lot of back and forth in that sense. And then for like Fiora and Yi and even like stealing like their Aurora, if they're not on purple Aurora, the Mind Splitter will probably like steal your Akshan from your hand, but if they're on a non-purple Aurora deck, then Akshan can absolutely steal their Aurora. And then here the 3rd copy of Ferris Forerunner. I was playing a couple of games and I started with 3 Rune Runner, 3 Forerunner, but the 3rd copy of Forerunner, or just having 6 drops, was getting too clunky in my hand. You could realistically play like 2 of them within the same game. So this ratio of 3 Rune Runner and 2 Forerunner in the main deck is what I'm going to try next, and then I might go even lower if I think that's warranted, but I have a suspicion that because of Kaisa and Victor, I want to keep a minimum of 2 Forerunner in the deck, so I would cut out something else that's like super expensive, and the card that comes to mind for me there is like this Trinity Force. I don't think I want to cut out a Kaisa, and Kaisa and Trinity Force are the only 4 drops that are expensive to play. Basically your hand gets clogged with all these 4 drops and 6 drops, and you have a hard time getting them onto the board. You're a tempo deck, you need to deploy your resources as quickly as possible. and efficiently as possible in order to close the game out. So we'll talk about the battlefields here. Candlelit Sanctum is your best game 1 battlefield by far, because scrying 2 and getting your combo together, this is like the highest chance you ever have in a best of 3 to get your combo together. And this is, in game 1 is also the time before your opponent is playing any kind of gear removal. So you want to maximize odds of just winning the game with the combo. So Candlelit Sanctum is the battlefield choice there. Games 2 and 3, where your opponent might have gear hate and your combo is less reliable, or it might just get you like 1 or 2 scores by playing them both at the same time. These Sunken Temple and Seat of Power drawing battlefields are much more advantageous, because then you can play more of like the tempo orientation of Lucian rather than only focusing on the combo gears. I see people playing Forge of the Fluffed. I'll address that real quick. I think that battlefield's obviously like nice because a lot of decks don't take advantage of it because they don't play gear, and maybe their legend doesn't want to exhaust itself in order to equip a gear. However, that battlefield does not help your deck's weakness, which is card draw and consistency. So having 2 battlefields that draw cards is, you know, pretty much what the deck needs. Candlelit sort of does that by letting you choose what your top deck is going to be, so your draws are more impactful. And then Sunken Temple and Seat of Power are just raw card draw, so you're drawing anywhere from 3 to 5 extra cards in a game, and that's all you really need to make the difference. Yes, these 2 battlefields are like more neutral, like the opponent can get draws off of them, and they benefit the opponent too, which you know, is obviously something that we try to avoid when deck building. But the way I see it, after playing this deck for like a couple months now, when you draw cards, your cards are like high impact and they last a long time. For example, your Ruin Runner, Forerunner, and all of your gear. Whereas when your opponent draws cards, they're like drawing like spells, or they're drawing like one-time use cards. So the impact of our cards is typically higher than the impact of our opponent's cards, and we get more value from drawing a single extra card compared to some other decks. Like if Kaisa draws like an extra couple of 2-drops, like do we really care that much? You know, we like the time Seat of Power has ended up hurting me is when like I'll draw say like 3 or 4 times off of it, but I haven't drawn into my Ruin Runner or Ferris Forerunner, and my Victor opponent has continually just replenished their removal spells. So yeah, sure, you can get punished, but mathematically, if you're mulliganing 2 cards, digging for your win conditions in these Ruin Runner and Ferris Forerunners, and you draw a whole bunch of extra cards with Sunken Temple and Seat of Power, you should be good to go. So yeah, that's it for this deck profile. Let me know any questions you guys have below. I have a deck for the mid-range variant of Lucian too, and then, that's going to be posted on the free Metafy guide. I'll be updating that free Metafy guide once I have a couple more days or maybe a week of testing in. I'll update how the matchups are performing. I'll update whatever changes I make to the list. I'm planning on maintaining a combo list and a mid-range list without the combo, and then, you know, people are free to choose whichever one they want to play. Alright, that's it from me. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys later.